This is my journal entry from 7 years ago. Hello, Erica. I'm writing you this to share my feelings. I don't like myself. I suck. I'm weird. Nobody wants to be your friend. I feel annoyed that you suck at everything. You're worthless. You don't deserve anything. Every mistake that you made is only your fault. You're pathetic. You should just give up. It makes me sad to remember how much of this I was carrying with me, and it took me years to unlearn this type of thinking. And one of the things that did help me was journaling. Journaling became a way to process these thoughts instead of letting them take over. At first, I didn't really know what I was doing, but over time, I found approaches that really made a difference. And I want to share them with you. A disclaimer, I'm not an expert, these are just the techniques that worked for me, and I'm just a random person making YouTube videos that also journals. So, these are my journaling techniques. The first technique that helped me was the love letter technique. This method is from a book by John Gary, and to be honest, I don't really necessarily recommend the book. I feel like it's a bit outdated on how relationships and men and women are viewed, but this love letter technique really stuck with me. The main purpose of this was intended to write a letter to your partner, saying why and how you're upset by something that they did. However, I found it very useful to use it on myself. So the way it works is that it guides you through 5 stages of emotion, which is anger, sadness, fear, remorse, and love. Each emotion has its prompts that you need to fill out. This technique helps you process emotions in a structured way. It's important that you go through all the emotions. Even if you don't feel necessarily angry, sometimes expressing anger can unlock the root of your pain. And this also works for sadness. If you don't necessarily feel sad, just going through the list helps you see what could be the main cause that you're feeling this way. And it is very important to not skip the love stage. Sometimes it can take a while to fill those prompts in, but this is the most important part because it helps you reframe your feelings with kindness and forgiveness. This journaling method basically forced me to be nice to myself, which is a good thing. I mainly used this when I was dealing with strong emotions, so I didn't use it that often, but when I did, it was very helpful. So I noticed that journaling started to help me with my negative self-talk, and I wanted to do it more often, which brings me to my next method, which is stream of consciousness. I think it's one of the most well-known ways of journaling. It is just writing down your spontaneous, uninterrupted flow of thoughts. You write down 1 or 2 pages of what you're feeling and thinking about in the moment, and I did it a couple of times a week. The love letter technique showed me that I should be kinder to myself, but the stream of consciousness journaling made me actually pay attention to what I was saying in the first place. And I started asking questions like, why do I feel this way? What makes me think like this? Why do I think this is true? And what is the reality of my thoughts? Is there any other explanation to what is happening? I started to counter my negative thoughts with real-life examples. Like, for example, I would say, I have no friends and nobody likes me. After writing that down, I would immediately reflect on these thoughts and give counter arguments. Well, maybe you don't have anybody to talk to you right now, but last week we had a call with our good friend, and another friend reached out to you yesterday just to see how you're doing. This is called metacognition. It involves reflecting on your thoughts and how they further impacted you. I'm not trying to invalidate my feelings, but I want to question them. Are they true, or is it just my brain trying to attach meaning to what is going on in the world and my body? Stream of consciousness journaling made me face my thoughts and this negative self-talk. It forced me to reflect on what I was saying to myself, how it made me feel, and how untrue my thoughts were compared to reality. At this point, I wasn't really consistent with journaling. Sometimes I would journal every day of the week, and sometimes I would journal a couple of times a month. Until I stumbled upon a video about art block made by Apple Cheeks. In the video, she talks about her art block and that she started doing morning pages. If you're an artist, you've probably heard of this method. It is a technique coined by Julia Cameron. It is a 3-page long handwriting, strictly stream of consciousness journaling. The goal is to dump all your thoughts on the page, no matter how silly, mundane, anxious, petty, without overthinking or censoring yourself. The difference between stream of consciousness journaling and morning page journaling is that morning pages you have to do every morning. You have to write 3 pages. It is not really meant to be analyzed and reread, it's just a brain dump. And you're encouraged to write without stopping, so even if you don't know what to write about, that's exactly what you write down. I don't know what to write about, and then you just keep writing until you finish the 3 pages. This is one of the tools that Julia Cameron introduces in her The Artist's Way book, which I only started reading it now, even though I've been doing the morning pages already for 2 years after watching the Apple Cheeks video. I don't even fully remember if I had art block back then, but something compelled me to write these morning pages. So I did. However, the first thing I did is I decreased the number from 3 pages to 2 pages. And you might judge me for this, but I just knew that I would be more committed if I wrote only 2 pages. And to be fair, it's very different if you write 3 pages in here or 3 pages in here. I just knew that 2 pages would be more doable for me and would keep me on track. And I was right. I journaled every morning, and even today I still have that habit. The morning pages gave me a solid routine, time and space to write down my thoughts about anything and everything. Since this was a brain dump, I also stopped caring about my handwriting, which I'm not saying that my handwriting was good in the first place, but I just really embraced the fact that it was just me writing nonsense. So I can show you an example of how it looks right now. The thing is, I can barely read it myself. I know that you're not supposed to look back at what you were writing for at least 8 weeks, but it's still nice to look at my old journals and see what I was doing back then. So yeah, it looks, I can't read it at all. The main purpose of these pages is to stop judging yourself and just let yourself write. It stops the self-critic in your brain that's telling you that this and that is a bad idea and allows the creative part of your brain to be listened to and to play around. This approach was created for artists, but I think it's useful for everyday people. It clears your mind, unlocks creativity, and helps you process emotions. Throughout the years with journaling, I feel like I improved the way I talk to myself, and I'm more precautious when intrusive thoughts enter my mind. But one thing that I was still struggling with is dwelling on the negative things that happen. I was really good at focusing my attention on the bad things that happen in my life and ignoring the good things. Those things could be big, like getting an injury, or small, like losing my favorite pen. So I decided to try a very popular method that you probably heard of, which is gratitude journaling. I have tried this method before, and I feel like it didn't really work for me, but for some reason I decided to give it another chance. So the plan is, at the end of my morning pages, I list 3 things that I'm grateful for that day. But when writing them down, I would particularly focus on the things that went my way. Like, for example, my favorite candy was on sale, or I finished that painting that I was working on for weeks. I would acknowledge all the small stuff and big stuff that were good. Recently, I also read a book about burnout by Amelia Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski. Highly recommended. Very good book. In the book, they also talk about gratitude and the most helpful way to do it. Because the authors mention that some people might find it that they feel way worse after doing this. It just reminds them of how many people don't have what they have, which makes the person feel helpless and inadequate. So the best way the author suggests is to write about who you have and the things that happened. So, for example, write about your friends, family, a kind stranger, the fact that you caught the train on time, or that you finally found your favorite pen. At first, I have to be honest, it felt like I didn't really do much, but over the time I feel like it kind of gained momentum, and I started to appreciate the good things that happened more often and in the moment. And this is basically the journaling method that I'm using now, which is morning pages that consist of 2 pages, and I end off with mentioning 3 things I'm grateful for. But I'm always open to trying out new techniques, and one of them is a technique called homework for life. I don't currently use this method, but I did try it for a couple of months and I found it really nice and useful. And I think it's a great method for beginners. I learned this method from Matthew Dix by reading his book about storytelling. So how this method works is every day in the evening, you take 5 to 10 minutes to reflect on your day and write down a story-worthy moment. So basically, if you had to tell a story about your day at a friend's dinner table, what would it be? Not every day contains a story-worthy moment, but the more you write them down, the more you see them. Why should you try this if you're not really planning to be a storyteller? Well, as I said, I personally tried this for a couple of months, mainly because I wanted to improve my storytelling. But what this exercise also does is it shows you importance and meaning in each day. You suddenly understand your importance in the world, even though you're just a small part of it. One of the stories that I wrote down was about a supermarket. So my dad has a discount card for this specific supermarket, but for some reason I just couldn't figure out how to activate it. I was using the self-checkout stuff to scan my groceries, and I just couldn't understand how to use the discount card. I tried scanning it, it doesn't scan. I tried putting it through the credit card slider, it also didn't really work. I didn't really get it. Was I too fast or too slow? My dad told me that I should do it through the scanner, but I still didn't manage to make it work. So a random day when I was checking out my groceries, I had the card with me and a random person asked me, "Hey, can I borrow your discount card?" And I was like, sure, why not? So I gave her the discount card. She tried sliding it also didn't work, and she asked me, hey, do you know how this works? And I was like, I think it works like this. And then I slide it down and it worked. She got a discount and I was like, oh, that's how you do it. And then from that point on, I knew how to use the discount card. I don't know, it was just a small moment that I could have already forgotten about, but for some reason it kind of stuck to me and I decided to write it down. The things that you write down don't need to be long. The way that the author suggests is just having a date and then just 1 or 2 sentences max about the story or the situation. And then you do that every day and you have a bunch of stories. I feel like this type of journaling can help you reflect on the day and see the small positive moments that impacted you or others. I have a couple notes that I wrote down while looking through all my old journals, and I wanted to share my points of improvements and some suggestions for you as well. My first suggestion is to start your journals with a year. I know it seems kind of obvious, but when I was looking through my old stack of journals, some of them didn't have the year written down, so I had to figure out what year I wrote them down in, and sometimes it's not that easy. As I mentioned before, when I started morning pages, I kind of progressively decreased the quality of my handwriting. And to be honest, I don't fully recommend it. I mean, it was really nice to get my thoughts on paper as fast as possible, but the fact that I can't read it back is not the best. It was quite nice to take a peek into how past Erica was thinking. So from this point on, I'm gonna have my journal to be decently readable. Speaking of morning pages, I don't always do them in the morning. Sometimes I just don't have time, so I do them in the evening. I usually tend to do them just before I start working, so after I have breakfast and other things. And sometimes I miss a couple of days because I'm busy. But I still do like the structure in general. Recently I also noticed if I don't journal for a while, I'm craving and itching to write my thoughts down. It feels like my recycling bin is too full and I need to delete my files. Next up, when I travel, I usually have my baby journal with me, because even this type of journal is sometimes a bit too big if I'm just traveling with my backpack. So I prefer having this baby notebook with me where I write down my thoughts. Very useful, fits into my Uniqlo shoulder bag. So last but not least, if you're a crafty person or a visual person, I highly recommend you try junk journaling. I found this journal from 2021 and I made this on it. Just probably was bored one day. I just randomly took some images from magazines, put them together and made this cool looking spread. Or even just having a little image or receipt or postcard next to the journal entry is quite nice because you can just have something visual to look at without even reading. Truthfully, I think journaling wasn't the only thing that helped me with my negative self-talk and negative thinking, but I think it played a really big part in it. If you're someone who's struggling to understand your emotions and you don't really necessarily have the means to see a therapist, I would also recommend you to read a book called Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julia Smith. I'm currently reading it now and I wish I had this book 7 years ago. I feel like it would be very helpful in understanding so many things. It has a lot of insights about feeling down, about grief, about motivation, and it's been out for a while. Maybe you've seen or heard about it, but it's a great book and I would suggest you read it. Also, the books that I mentioned are all in the description except for one book because I didn't really like it anymore. To end this video, I wanted to share a more recent journal entry. So March 10th, what year is this? 10th of March 2024. Yesterday was a shitty day and today is not amazing, but hey, I make the best out of it. I felt pretty down and utterly lonely and now too, but at least I walked a lot and I'm in a new place so I can distract my mind. And then I proceed to talk about why I'm upset, the train tickets I bought, my YouTube channel and McDonald's. And I also have a little drawing in the corner of a McDonald's cup and fry holder. So this journal entry is all over the place and that's, I guess, how journaling goes. I still have negative feelings or thoughts, moments that I feel down or lonely, but I am more kind to myself and the way that I think and feel. And I've come a long way. For me, journaling didn't fix everything overnight, but taking small steps in the end made a big impact.